All right, welcome back to another episode of the Silver Stacking Podcast, episode
Yes.
3. And we have Silver Slayer
Actually,
here.
fourth episode.
Oh, episode 4. Episode
Yeah.
4. I mean,
We've done that many.
it's just flowing naturally, man.
Yeah. It's
I'm
so
investing with
crazy.
TJ.
I'm
Got
Silver
Silver
Slayer.
Slayer here.
Yes.
Thanks again
Yes.
for tuning in. We have about almost 800 subscribers. So definitely hit that subscribe button down below. We're going to be doing a silver giveaway before we hit, or once we hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. So definitely hit that subscribe button down below.
Yeah, not many slots left, guys. I mean, if you want a chance to win some silver, and I'm doing a silver giveaway on my main channel. So lots of silver given away to lots of different people. So make sure you subscribe.
And speaking of shout outs, we also have Bullion Max here. Definitely got to shout them out, just given the fact that they are our channel sponsor. These guys have some really great deals here. They just released the
dude, I'm just so grateful that a company like this is willing to sponsor us. I mean, this isn't just some random silver company that like, this is a legit, big company with great prices, a huge variety. Like, it's just really cool, man. So shout them out.
Exactly. If you're looking for some new Maple Leafs, they got the 2022 Maple Leafs out right now in silver and gold. So they're right there. So definitely check out Bullion Max. The link will be in the description below.
Yes.
Today, we have a few interesting topics.
Yeah.
The first one we're going to dive into is definitely some big news that came out of the Silver Institute, and that is their view on silver demand for 2022. Now, Silver Slayer also has some input on this as well, that he spoke to me off camera before the show, and he definitely has a lot of insight to add to this. But just to give you a brief look into this, let's just dive in real quick. So global silver demand forecast to reach a record 1.112 billion ounces in 2022. Now, let's take a look here and see what they have to say. The outlook for silver demand is exceptionally promising for 2022, with global silver demand forecast to rise to a record high of 1.112 billion ounces. The increase will be driven by a record silver industrial fabrication, which is forecast to improve by 5% as silver's use expands in both traditional and critical green technologies. Now, this is something we've been talking about nonstop.
Critical, that word critical,
insane
technologies. Yeah.
This is something we've been talking about nonstop, which is pretty much, we obviously know some of the use cases for silver, but obviously as time goes on, more and more people are getting tuned in to the fact that there's going to be much more of a use case in green energy. So that's always something that to be watchful for in the coming years. They go on to say physical silver investment demand, consisting of silver bars and bullion coin purchases, is projected to jump 13% in 2022, achieving a 7-year high. So those of you guys who joined Wall Street Silver, and those of you who also are subscribers on our channel, are likely some of those people who are adding to that increased percentage. So that's insane.
And it keeps going on. Silver's use in jewelry and silverware also expected to strengthen 11% and 21% respectively. That's like, these numbers are insane. What it shows is not only is the industrial sector from green, 5G towers, electric vehicles, solar panels, silver, lithium-ion batteries, not only is that demand incredibly high, reaching multi-year highs, also people like you and I, the investing side of things, right? Coins, bars, and jewelry. So everyone wants a slice of the silver pie, but there's not much left. I mean, that's insane.
Exactly. And then the other thing too to think about is something they mentioned here, which is macro and geopolitical conditions. Now, we all heard, we're recording this a week before this episode will come out. So we'll see how things play out throughout this week. But many of us have heard about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. And, over this weekend, President Biden actually spoke to Vladimir Putin about this. But at the end of Friday, markets just tanked and gold and silver spiked in response to that. So this is essentially what they're saying. Macro and geopolitical conditions will generally support precious metals prices in the first half of the year. Geopolitical conditions is what I'm referring to. Macroeconomic, we've talked about many times on this channel, which was the support of higher CPI. And I have said that I expect that to begin to come down towards the end of the year, maybe the middle to the end of the year. But in the first half of the year, those macroeconomic conditions will be beneficial to silver. And also, as you can see here, the Silver Institute says, once the pace of US policy rate hikes becomes more evident, the price outlook becomes more challenging. So again, what I've been saying on this channel before. So obviously, we have some demand that we're looking to see rise to the upside in the future. So one thing I want to pose to Silver Slayer here is he actually spoke to me about not just demand, but also supply as well of silver, and some news that actually came out from the Perthman and others. So I'll let you take that away, Silver Slayer.
Yeah. So let me just brief on how this works. So the U.S. Mint, they have to guesstimate the next year how many Silver Eagles they think they're going to sell. So, it's always a guess. It's not like they have a set number. Last year, they guesstimated around 13 million. They were way off. So they had to make an emergency mintage supply at the end of the year from the San Francisco Mint, 1 million Silver Eagles, right? Because they literally ran out. It wasn't just like, oh, they were low. The U.S. Mint ran out of Eagles. Like there was none left. They can't find silver blanks. A lot of it having to do with the distribution, since like Mexico and Peru, Chile, Australia, China, those are like the top 5 producers of silver. There were so many, border, boundaries and whatever from the virus that silver couldn't get distributed. So they made the 1 million mintage supply, right? They couldn't even produce 13 million Silver Eagles last year. The first month of January this year, they sold 5 million in the first month. That means in 3 months, they'll already have sold more Eagles than they could even produce last year in 3 months. Not only that, more news came out that the Royal Mint and Perth Mint both also are hitting record multi-year highs for demand, which is interesting during this time. You would have thought like last year, the numbers would be higher, but it seems like everyone is trying to buy silver. And the scary part about this is as soon as the US Mint posted that article last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, that they ran out of silver and that there really was a silver shortage, that was the first time we ever heard a mint admit it, right? They admitted, yo, there is a serious silver shortage. We can't find silver blanks. Yeah. That's when the premiums started to rise. Right then is when American Eagles, instead of $2-3 over spot, started becoming $10-12 over spot, because silver is scarce. So as the numbers 5 million in the first month of January show, these premiums could skyrocket even higher for Eagles, at least, which is insane. And not only just Eagles, Perthman and Royal Mint as well admitted it. So we might just see spot price become completely detached from the actual price you have to pay. So
with those premiums added on top of it. Yeah. So that's something I've been saying. I don't expect premiums to go down anytime soon. We just have too many issues going on in the supply chain that, it's really starting to show up, and it's, it already has shown up in price with premiums, and it likely will continue as time goes on. Now, one of the additional things that I noticed this past week, again, we're recording this a week ahead, is that we just got the inflation numbers for 7.5%. Now, inflation, or I should say CPI, rose up to 7.5%. People were expecting it to be 7.2. Some were expecting 7.3. I went on record, stuck my neck out on the line, showed you guys my numbers. And I even thought, hey, 7.3 is likely what we'll have. Well, I shouldn't say likely, but we'll be close to somewhere around 7.3. We got 7.5. So the estimates that I had, along with other people on Wall Street, was around 7.3 and beat those expectations. But we were pretty dang close.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So, again, I make these models from multiple regression. Anyone can do this. The data is publicly available. If you know how to assemble these things together,
but you're
anyone
extremely
can
smart.
do this.
But you're extremely smart too.
But well, nah, like
you're impressive, bro. Like, I'm so happy that you're the co-host. Like, you're so smart, dude. I call you a genius on my channel. I'll be like, yo,
oh, no.
like my co-host, he's a freaking genius.
But the cool thing about doing this is I was eyeing this back in November. So I have a 2-month lag with all this data. As you can see down here, I'm eyeing around 6.15 in March.
Like, dude, that's very accurate that you were able to do that.
We'll see what happens. I overshot it a little bit in December, undershot it a tiny bit in January. But as you can see down here, even if these numbers aren't exactly on the money, I expect CPI to come down a bit in the coming months. And that's what other people are expecting as well. In addition to this, the Fed is also starting to get a little bit more hawkish, with Fed's Mester saying, hey, each meeting is going to be in play for rate hikes this year. So remember in our episode last week, we spoke about how the Bank of America basically said almost every meeting they're expecting there to be rate hikes. The Cleveland president, Loretta Mester, basically said, you know what? That's an option. So even though we were like, hey, that's completely unrealistic, there's no way they're going to raise them every single meeting. What she's basically saying is, yeah, that's actually in play. That could possibly happen.
Yeah.
So the
possibly,
Fed is,
though. Keyword possibly. Keywords they use are expect, possibly. That's important too, because speculation alone, if people think that will happen, the markets will move before the actual, situation.
Yeah, before it actually happens. Exactly.
And were they trying seven rate hikes?
Yeah, which would be insane.
Yeah.
So like, imagine that would be, let's just say it's 25 basis points each time. So that would take us to roughly, 1.75 for those interest rate hikes. That's a lot. And I think maybe in the first episode or so, and this might have been maybe something I did on my channel a while ago, I was showing how the federal funds rate basically didn't get up to last time we tried to raise rates back in 2018. We got up to a certain level, but every single time we raise rates to a certain peak, it never surpasses the previous peak in business cycles. So that to say, if that pattern continues, will we even get past 2% as far as rate hikes are concerned? Who knows? I'd be surprised, if we're even able to get to where we were in the previous cycle. So again, as high as we got back in 2018. But let's dig into this article a little bit. Cleveland Federal Reserve President Loretta Mester laid out an aggressive plan for reducing easy money policies this year, saying the central bank will be ready to hike rates at any meeting and should be looking at shedding mortgage-backed securities it is holding. Each meeting is going to be in play, Mester said Wednesday at a virtual event hosted by the European Economics and Financial Center. We're going to assess conditions. We're going to assess how the economy is evolving. We're going to be looking at the risks, and we're going to be removing accommodation. Her comments come with markets widely expecting the Fed to raise its benchmark short-term borrowing rate at its March meeting. So again, that's coming up next month, guys.
Yeah.
Pretty much right around the corner.
Yeah.
traders are pricing in at least 4 more increases throughout the course of the year. So we're seeing all this repricing happening, not just in stocks, but because there's repricing happening in stocks, because there are people selling, the dollar is in the short term a bit higher than the trend that it was heading down in 2021. And it's adding some of that downward pressure onto assets like silver. So as rate hikes continue to be forecasted, expect that downward pressure to maintain. So that's why I'm saying, hey, spot price may come down, but premiums
Exactly.
will still be in play.
Yeah.
Continuing down here, Mester said she sees a March hike like lately, but doesn't expect to raise the rate by more than 25 basis points or a quarter percentage point, as is the norm. So, maybe in this first rate hike, we might just get 25 basis points. But, the Fed is basically saying over and over again, look, we may be pretty aggressive here in 2022. And it looks like the markets are trying to price that in. How are you seeing this, Silver Slayer? What are your thoughts on that?
All speculation. Like it
Mhm.
just scares me bit because nowadays, okay, so back in the day, since silver is tangible, since it is, supply and demand, speculation didn't have as much of a pull. But
Mhm.
nowadays, especially as we advance, like social media wise, speculation has a huge play in the game, and we have to adjust and adapt to that, right? Like when they said we should see this, they expect to, you know, that isn't set in stone, but people will invest as it is. They'll invest like they are going to do 7 or 8 hikes, even though that might not be the case. And then after that plays out, then the markets will correct back, kind of. So we'll almost like see a false market price, and that can be scary because people will be investing during that, not realizing that the markets will correct or shift dramatically afterwards. And a lot of people that are newer could get burnt, especially if they panic sell. So it just seems scary, especially like March when that happens. Like things could get very, especially, looking at the numbers. I mean, it's a great entry point, right? Worrisome at least, just because
And
there's so much happening.
right, and it's always important to have your own plan and your own process. So if anything comes up that you weren't expecting, you know what to do, or to not get shaken. So let's say, for example, prices just drop automatically without, and you were planning on, or you had a different kind of plan in place, or plan A. Well, hey, now you can start executing plan B or plan C, whatever that is
Yes.
for you, but you always have to think, what exactly is my goal here? Does the, change in price, per year even really shake me, or am I just going to continue stacking? Or
Yeah.
am I more of a short-term person? Did that throw things off a bit? Do I have some time to really like recalibrate? So just make sure that if you're new to stacking silver, that you always have your plan A, plan B, plan C,
Yeah.
supporting your overall strategy.
Yeah, it's called a silver
Yeah.
stacking strategy, right?
Mhm.
The strategy part's important for that.
Exactly. And over the course of the last, I would say maybe a couple of months, what I've been talking about was, the whole like price coming down. And one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of people talk about, once, the markets open during the day, there's this whole tamp down thing. I saw this on Wall Street Silver, somebody getting a tamp stamp.
Oh
7
no.
a.m.'s coming, 8 a.m.'s coming. And as soon as 9 o'clock hits, it just goes on down. If anybody actually has this tattoo, that would be hilarious.
Yeah, that would be great. That's so
but
yeah.
but the thing you have to remember is what's happening intraday may not be something you want to pay attention to if you're not a short-term trader.
Yes. The
But
only
if you are
yes.
looking at the short term, all over the course, and this is just some of our technical analysis here, but over the course of the last couple of days, recording this the week before Valentine's Day week, We have silver rising as far as the MACD is concerned, as far as the RSI is concerned, and even just price. You're seeing silver rising along with these technical indicators. So right now we might be seeing silver making a move to the upside. One of the things that I like to do is kind of be mindful of where silver is going in the short term by looking at these kinds of charts, but I don't use them solely for trading, for example. I like to have my own view of what's happening fundamentally and what's going on. And then I like to use technical analysis for timing. So if I have a view that silver's price is going to explode to the upside over the course of 2022, I'm looking for moments of weakness. And I'm talking about like just pure weakness throughout the year. So I can start buying in heavily because I know the price is going to go up, and vice versa. If I think price is going down and I want to sell, I'm looking for moments of strength. So I'm like, okay, now the price is up pretty high. I think silver is going to come down. Maybe I'll sell a bit for X, Y, and Z reason. But again, when you're looking at technical analysis, this is a mistake that a lot of newbies make. They just look at it purely and don't think about anything else. They just think, okay, if I know what RSI is, if I know what MACD is, I don't have to know anything about silver, or I don't have to know anything about any asset that I'm looking at. I just have to follow these things, and then it'll tell me what to do, which we know is not the case. If you were around in 2021 during a lot of the moves in silver, a lot was happening in the macro that was completely undermining what was happening. And there are certain things that you would look at and be like, okay, in technical analysis, you'd be like, oh, silver's about to move to the upside. Then all of a sudden you get delta around like the end of June, and then prices just come falling down, which we were looking at up until like what, April, May. Silver prices were shooting up. Same thing with gold. And all of a sudden we started hearing people talking about delta, developing in India. And then people here are saying, hey, it's gonna, come over to the US. Then all of a sudden you start to see markets course correct. So you got to know what's going on in the macro.
There was even instances the dollar was moving with or silver was moving with the dollar index, like upwards. Like there were situations where it was just so out of whack. And I mean, it's interesting times. If let's say like 5 years ago, someone would show us what's happening right now, but didn't tell us the price of silver, just showed us all this, we would probably say triple digits, right? We know there's price manipulation. We know that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that are, I guess, not incorporated with the price on the forefront, at least, whether it's spoofing, whether it's, X, Y, Z. And that's going to be hard moving forwards, because we could look at $29 trillion in debt. We could look at the dollar. We could look at even supply and demand. And even though it makes sense that silver would move to that degree, it might not be to that extent that it should,
Exactly.
And I do think there is going to be a time and a place where, regardless of what gold's doing, silver will move on its own, take on a life of its own. I do think that day and age will happen, but it is going to take time. And I think it's already starting to happen. But like I always talk about, scarcity, supply and demand, the shortage is going to be the main thing that does pull it apart.
Before we get into the next topic, I kind of wanted to throw this out to Silver Slayer just to kind of have fun a little bit. So obviously here, got some silver in my hand. I got a tube of the stuff. I know some people like to use silver stocks, SILJ, PSLV. I'm more of a fan of using, or stacking the physical thing. When I first got into silver, I got a lot of questions. Now, obviously, you get questions from family and friends and stuff like that. But if you have a significant other, if you have a wife or whoever, they will likely, especially if they're on the younger side, will look at these things and think, well, what is this token that you got from, some arcade? Like, they wouldn't even think that is something that you should even be looking at for any kind of, economic or financial reason. So one of the things I want to toss to Silver Slayer, and I can start too, is, what was it like explaining silver to your significant other, or just anybody that you were maybe seeing romantically or something like that, and you told them about silver? I remember when I first got into silver, I was just completely all in on silver and gold. I didn't want to touch anything else. It was just silver, silver, silver. And I was educating my wife about it, and she was just like, "What is that? Like what?" And but the thing is once it came and I got it, I was like, "Just put it in your hand. Just put it in your hand." And she was like, "All right." So she put her hand out and I put it in her hand, and she was like, "Wow, this actually, I thought it'd be like, the weight of a quarter, but it actually has like some, hefty weight to it." And I was like, "Yeah, it actually feels like what it's worth, doesn't it?"
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I try to do with my wife is, it's one thing to have stocks, but it's another thing to have hard assets. So if you can actually put and actually say, "Hey, this is what this is worth nominally in dollars," and feel it, you almost give a nice instant connection of the value and the wealth that you're actually holding once you can actually touch that thing. Like even this ring right here, this is 24 karat gold. When I got this wedding band, I haven't really seen many 24 karat gold bands, or even just many gold bands, especially a lot of millennials nowadays. A lot of millennials have silicone wedding bands. I have some friends who have gold rings, but they're like 14 karat, 18 karat. So when I looked at their rings compared to mine, even they were like, "Wow, yours is like really, really yellow." And theirs almost looked like silver. It was it almost didn't have like a gold tint to it, So it's almost kind of like you're drawn to, the actual metal, like, "Oh wow, this is real gold," or "Wow, this is real silver," and you feel it. There's a difference there, and you can almost like get a sense of the wealth that you're touching and you're holding. But one of the things I like to do is just like put the coin in the person's hand and say like, "Hey, this is real wealth right here." Well, have you had any experiences like that?
Yeah. Well, I last night, with my dad last night, that same situation happened, but the best one is I took a speech class in college, and my presentation for finals was silver. So I brought in silver and did this whole presentation, and it was like a public speaking class about why silver is valuable, or why why you should invest into it. So like I had to I had to present in front of all these college kids, why and they were all clueless, right? So what I did was I brought in some silver coins and I passed it around, and all of them were just shocked about the weight. So it's similar to what you did. And then I also started showing the dollar. Like I think I showed like usdebtclock.org to show them, the dollar is actually worthless, because they don't know any of that. They just think, oh. So I showed them like that part of things, and then I kind of went over the history of silver, of like what it's used for, why it's valuable beyond just it's shiny. A lot of people would seriously think just gold and silver are valuable because they're shiny, because they look, it's there's real gold kind of, because it is used more for like jewelry and coins and stuff. But
well, they put silver in mirrors. So I guess you can say, "Hey, there's a shiny
that's
part."
True. Yeah, because it is the most highly conductive metal for light sensitivity as well. I mean, for the college class, it was cool. I think I like aced that presentation too. But and I used my
that's actually
YouTube
pretty
channel.
cool.
But my YouTube channel, I was used to speaking in front of a camera all day talking about silver, so it's super easy to do that in the class.
Did you show them your YouTube channel at the time?
No. I just passed out the silver. But last night I actually did show my dad the podcast.
Oh yeah? What did he say?
He didn't know, like he thought I just did, because he knew I did YouTube stuff, but he didn't know it was about silver or anything. So he thought it was really cool. And he himself said he likes silver better than gold, and he has some silver. And I was like, not like coins, but a lot of he says he prefers silver jewelry and stuff. And he knew like a lot more than I thought. But But
I'm
like
telling you, man, like the older
yeah,
generations, they have much more of a connection to gold and silver than
yeah,
maybe they even talk about, on a day-to-day basis. Like I remember talking to my grandfather. I've never talked to him about gold and silver before, but I remember I started talking about it because, the topic of YouTube came up. And he immediately started talking about when Nixon took us off the gold window. And he started going, he started going in on the topic. And I was just like, I've never heard
yeah.
my grandfather talk about these things,
You know what's
It was so
interesting
cool.
is because back then there was so many more things happening with silver, right?
Mhm.
1971, and people had to know, right? Like getting rid of the
Mhm.
gold standard, or like in 1980, the Hunt brothers cornered the silver market because at that time you couldn't buy gold. It was legal
Yeah.
to own gold. So like nowadays it's just gold and silver. People did you know how many people watching this podcast right now didn't even know that 40 years ago you couldn't even buy gold, it was illegal. Like a lot of people don't know that because they're younger, or they just weren't into the market at that time. But like 50, 10 years ago, a decade ago, silver was $50. If you
Yeah.
just started stacking, you're probably just thinking, oh, silver's just always been 25 or whatever. But there's been
Nah.
times where silver has been extremely high or illegal. You couldn't buy it, which that was also a reality in 1980. The government banned silver because the Hunt brothers owned 77% of the silver supply in the world, and then tried to turn all those contracts into physical delivery. But
Mhm.
the point is though that it does make sense that older generations do know more about, or are more educated, because there was so much happening back then.
Exactly. And speaking of the older generations, we've got this coming up, which is, Social Security. Will Social Security run out of money? Here's what could happen to your benefits if Congress doesn't act. A recent report found that starting in 2034, retirees will only receive part of their benefits. Now, like me and you, Silver Slayer, like by the time we get old, there's probably
Yeah,
gonna be like a penny
yeah,
per check. But I think one of the things about older generations that we may not be aware of, maybe some of us, but they've been through so much crap with different like financial things that they've seen.
yeah.
You've got like what we're seeing right now with like a lot of manias. You could say like maybe crypto manias or NFTs or memes. Meme stocks, people who were around in like the late 90s, they're like, well, remember Beanie Babies?
Yeah,
Like those things were like crazy. People were trading those things left and
yeah.
right.
Pokemon
So
cards,
yeah,
man.
so it's just like they've seen many of these things, and they're like, you know what, I'm tired of just having my wealth being stolen from me in different ways. You know, this is why I'm getting into silver and gold and hard assets, real estate and other things too, because it's like, I know, for example, that's something I can touch, that's something that is in my control physically,
Yes.
and no one can take that from me. It's in my control. So it's unfortunate when you see articles like this that say things like, well, will Social Security run out? And um, going to the article, says for millions of retirees, and I know that for us, many of the people who watch some of our channels are maybe in this age bracket or approaching it. Social Security provides an essential source of income in retirement. In 2020, around 50 million retired workers collected Social Security benefits. However, the recent 2021 Social Security Trustees Report finds that in 2034, retirees will start receiving a reduced benefit if Congress doesn't fix funding issues for the social program. In other words, Social Security will exist after 2034, but retirees will only receive 78% of their full benefit starting then, which is huge. That's just
Yeah.
like, imagine you're like, okay, I'm planning for retirement. I expect to get X amount for Social Security. And there's like, oh, wait, no. remove 25% from that. It's just like, how do you plan for that, especially when you're about to enter retirement?
I think it's going to be worse than that.
Mhm.
Honestly, by then, like so much more will happen, and the dollar will be so much weaker. Like,
Mhm.
actually, I want to ask, do you think there is going to be a reset, like financially? Like, do you think the dollar is going to last another 20, 30 years? Or do you think it's going to collapse fully like so many third world countries?
So I think what will likely happen, and I've been reading this book called, and I definitely recommend it to anybody who's looking to read something new about economics. It's called the Changing World Order. It's by Ray Dalio. He's the CIO of Bridgewater, this really big hedge fund. Basically, he went 500 years into the past and looked at all of the major empires. It started with the Dutch, and what was interesting about all these empires is that they all had, at a certain point, the reserve currency of the world. So the Dutch had the Dutch guilder. They rose and fell. While they were falling, the British were rising. And then the British had, obviously, we know the pound. The British rose, and then they started to fall. When they were falling, we came up. The dollar, goes up, and now people are saying we're peaking and we're coming down a bit. Now, who's going to take the crown? So a lot of people are looking at potentially China. There are some other countries as well. It's hard to say this early on who exactly will be the next empire. I mean, many people are looking at China, but obviously China has some demographic headwinds. A lot
Yeah.
of people in their economy are, because of the one-child policy, they're not going to have many young people by the middle of the century. So demographics are tied pretty strongly with GDP. So they may not, their strength may, some are thinking it may fizzle out in GDP terms by the middle of the century. India is looking pretty interesting, but it's tough to say. I do think at a certain point the dollar will lose its shine. Thinking the fact that there used to be silver dollars,
Yeah.
but the dollar will lose its shine, and there will be another currency that'll take its place. I think at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily looking at which currency will be the reserve currency. I'm more so looking at global monetary policies. So currently, we're living in a foreign exchange environment where currencies are valued relative to other currencies. So the dollar has its strength relative to the euro. And then something will happen in the European economy. And then at a certain point, the euro might be stronger than the dollar. And then same thing with the pound, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That's how they get their value. It's by comparison of other currencies. But the thing about that is, with managing those economies, there's always the constant increase of the money supply. So for me, as long as that still exists, this is always going to be in play for me. So
Yeah.
the other type of monetary regime is if people start to go more towards austerity, which is they're not printing money, and their money is fixed. That's something completely different. Then you start to have to, start to recalibrate and think, okay, well, they're not printing money anymore. Okay, let me start to rethink things a little bit as far as, my investments, maybe as far as, what I'm allocating my cash into. But as long as, governments are printing money, and whoever's going to have the foreign reserve current, or whoever's going to have the reserve currency of the world in the next few decades, to me, that doesn't matter. It's what's going to happen with this monetary regime relative to silver, relative to gold. And if it's the same, then I'm holding on to these guys.
Yeah.
There is
Honestly,
something that I do want to talk about in the next podcast. It's going to be a bit of a cliffhanger here, So definitely subscribe to hear this in the next podcast. I just have to do more reading on it. But there is a company out there that has the potential to quote unquote make elements from nuclear fission.
What?
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it as a
Uh,
cliffhanger. I'm gonna leave it as a cliffhanger, but
wow.
obviously start thinking about, what implications that could have on silver and
Yeah.
gold. So I'm going to do some more reading. I'm going to bring this back to you guys because I think it's important for us to talk about as far as having gold and silver, just in the way that we talk about, mining and space and everything like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but to answer your question, that was my answer to your question.
Yeah.
As far as
Honestly,
yeah,
I think Bitcoin's gonna replace the dollar. Honestly, like if you think
yeah,
about it, like a sci-fi movie, like in it when there's like flying cars and stuff, it's all like digital, like very like cryptic. Like I feel like we're going that direction,
Mhm.
especially since the virus, like people don't want to touch dollar bills. I mean, we're already like cashless nation, you know, mobile banking, Bitcoin ATMs. Like I feel like it's all like starting to go that direction. But since the dollar, I mean, every fiat-based system lasts like 100 years or so before it like collapses. And
Right. Yeah, and Ray Dalio talks about that in the book.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I think that especially now, since central banks are already getting into crypto, like there's the USD coin, Tether's pegged to the dollar, Ripple is owned by central banks. I feel like we are starting to go more the decentralized route, but the government's still going to try to regulate it. Obviously, they're always going to try to get their hands in. But like Bitcoin is cool because there is no Bitcoin to China, Bitcoin to USA. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Like it's one coin, instant transactions, zero to little fees, and it is already starting to replace the dollar. If you look at, so many companies integrating it now, like it's everywhere. But the price, I feel like you said, there's gonna have to be like a fixed price at some point. But
So I would say there's two things. So like I know the price is high, but people talk about sats, the Satoshi thing, where basically Satoshis are a fraction of
yeah,
what Bitcoin is. So it's Bitcoin, but it's a fraction of what
that's
Bitcoin
his
is. And we
name,
can
Satoshi, whatever. That's the guy that made
yeah.
Bitcoin.
And people are saying, well, we won't price things in Bitcoin, we'll price things in
Yeah,
Satoshi. And which granted, that's something. The only thing that I don't know about is the Federal Reserve has two mandates. It's price stability and it's looking at unemployment, making sure that it's in range. The one thing about Bitcoin that I don't know, I don't know if it would be adopted by central banks is if so the thing is central banks, all of them have a mandate for price stability and price controls, but they have to have control over the currency, just in
yeah,
the way that they have control over the dollar. They can print a bunch so they can increase money supply, reduce interest rates, so on and so forth. You can't do that with Bitcoin.
well,
So
some countries actually got rid of their dollar and only use Bitcoin now. They're like third world countries, which is
yeah, like I
interesting.
know El Salvador was doing something along that line.
Yeah,
So I guess what I'm saying is that like I don't think that central banks would adopt them in the way that they are. I guess more so in the sense, the U.S., Europe, other big central banks, or other big countries with central banks. These guys need to be able to have the ability to print money to control
yeah.
inflation, deflation,
You
so on
can't.
and so forth. If inflation runs rampant, they have no ability to change to fix that. Now, here's the thing. So, is it going to be possible for the global economy, or let's just say the US, the dollar just goes, kaput, and we all just start over again. And then we start with a fixed monetary regime. Then I could say, okay, I could imagine a world where Bitcoin is, in play for everybody, or maybe even another kind of currency.
Yeah,
But if we're going to continue with this, free floating exchange regime, I don't see how Bitcoin will be adopted by all central banks, because they still have to have that mandate. Because here's the thing: if not, there's no reason to have a central bank. They have those two.
Yeah.
They all have that one mandate, which is price stability.
Yeah.
If there is no reason for them to be around, if there is no reason for them for anybody to control price stability, there's no reason for a central bank to really be there.
Yeah.
So, and not to say central banks have always existed. I mean, obviously the Federal Reserve came around in the early 1900s. So who knows, maybe in the future we may not have central banks anymore. But if they do exist and they continue to exist, I think Bitcoin, as far as country or national adoption, the world over, may have a bit of a hurdle to jump. But as far as like developing countries, I know El Salvador's been looking into it. We may see more of that, but I don't know if we'll see the US or the European Union or
Yeah. Bigger
other
ones.
countries adopting them
Yeah.
to that level, because we're addicted to our printing press.
Yeah.
So who
And
knows? Who knows what'll happen?
and because crypto, you have to mine it, and if you like, there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be created, so, and 16 million have already been mined. So there's only 5 million Bitcoin left to get mined. And after that, it's, it's in circulate. Whoever owns it can basically name the price, because that's it. There's no more to be found. But besides that point, that wasn't even a point. I was just, but centralized banks, right? It's centralized. Bitcoin's the exact opposite. It's decentralized. So
Exactly.
instead of the centralized banks being able to do something, if something was to change on the blockchain, everyone has to vote, and it's the vote that changes instead of them changing it. And I think that's really cool for that. And every transaction is stored publicly on the blockchain. That's how like JP Morgan got caught calling Bitcoin a scam, and then bought like millions of dollars in Bitcoin right afterwards. They got exposed for that, because every transaction is public, and I think that, like, I do think Bitcoin has a lot of pros, you know, comparing it to our financial system. But yeah, it's gonna have to be like, maybe it would be like USD coin, since it's pegged to the dollar. It's literally called US dollar coin.
So I do
But
think that's going to be, I think with the Federal Reserve, they're releasing some white paper about them getting in, creating their own stable coin and everything like
yeah,
that. So I do think that
that's a good point too.
will
That's a
have teeth.
really good point. Stable
Mhm.
coins, crypto, all of those aren't the same. A stable coin is not a crypto. They're different, right? They're all
Mhm.
different. Uh and I think it's an investment coin. I don't know, but those are all different things that have different meanings, and work different ways as well. And like
Mhm.
GSX, actually, they're a stable coin, they're a crypto and an investment coin. So like the gold they mine out of the ground also goes into the coin backing it out. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good point as well. If it was crypto, I feel like it also wouldn't, or if it was going to be like crypto, it wouldn't be crypto. It would be like a stable coin or something.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see like the Federal Reserve come out with some announcement about something like that in the future. I think maybe that's the closest we'll see it kind of dipping its toes into like the digital world of currency. But I don't know if they'll come out and say like, all right, we're done with the dollar. We're going
Yeah,
into
that's a
Bitcoin, you know?
realistic, yeah, like, because people are there saying like the Bitcoin thing, that might be more like extreme, like almost like talk about, I don't know, like what you're saying does seem more realistic, more probable.
So the thing you also have to consider is like, for example, the US, we are bloated. We all know that we have this huge, deficit, for example. One of the reasons why we're able to run that deficit is because, and when you're running a deficit, you're essentially, without getting again too nerdy, you have a negative current account and you have a positive financial account. So meaning you have a bunch of countries who have exposure to U.S. debt, um, and US currency and everything like that. That's the only reason, or one of the few reasons, why we're able to have this deficit that we have. If we transition to Bitcoin or something else, and we're like, all right, we're done with this, will we continue to be able to run a deficit? I don't know. I would venture to say we wouldn't even be able to get to that point, because it would disrupt so much, and it would kind of kneecap us, even if we were to make that transition, because we have this negative current account, this positive financial account, and if that's completely done away with, there's no way for us to continue running this deficit, and we would have to completely shrink and tighten our belts. I don't think that the adoption of Bitcoin and maybe some other currency will be to the US's benefit, because we are essentially living beyond our means.
Yeah. It definitely, it definitely won't be to our benefit. I feel like they hate Bitcoin, right? Like they're trying to control it. So because it's Bitcoin and silver are very similar, right? They both go against the dollar. You're both in complete control, right? Like when I have my Bitcoin in my cold wallet, like nobody can touch that, like unless you literally break into my house, find the piece of paper tangible that has like you can't. I don't know. Like they're both very similar.
Same thing with silver. It's like, hey, we got control over this.
Yeah.
And that's also, it's funny enough you say that. One of the reasons why, it's a little bit of a tangent, but for those who are watching this, they don't have silver, and they're thinking about, why would I want to even own this thing? One of the main benefits that I look at when it comes to owning different assets, whether it's, you could have stocks, you could have real estate, you could have your own business, that's an asset. You could have silver, you could have gold, all those things. Not only do they, behave differently, but there's something that I like to call diversifying your control. So when you have stocks, your account basically is housing your shares. When you have a bank account, I mean, you have the digital number in your checking account or the digital number in your savings account or whatever. But if you go in there and ask for all of that money, especially if it's over a significant amount, it's like, well, we got to wait, because you're asking us to give you so much. We got to get that money from our local Federal Reserve chapter. Then we can give it to you, but only after you fill out the suspicious activity form. So like, there's control that's not in your hands when it even comes to your own money in your bank account.
Yeah.
This gives you a different kind of control, which is, let's say, for example, you do want to, convert just a smidge of this. But let's say, for example, it amounts to about $10,000.
It can't be.
You don't have to go through that issue.
It has to be like $9,999.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it will get reported.
But if you go to a coin shop, and maybe depending on the different state, I know here when I went to my LCS, I didn't sell over $10,000 worth, but he even told me, he was like, in the state of Washington, if you want to sell over $10,000 and you want it in cash, I don't have to, basically have you fill out that form.
Oh, really? If it's is that just Washington? Or
it depends on different states. Okay. Washington's one of those states.
Yeah.
So basically, if it's cash, he's like, look, you don't have to sign that form or anything. It's yours. Go ahead.
Wow, cool. Yeah, because I know like the silver stackers, we always like talk about like selling $9,999 and then selling more, like another 9,000 like the next week or whatever. But
exactly. So like that's just something to think about. It's like, I have control because I can go to that LCS and just do that right then and there. So there's speed there. Whereas if I go to my, local bank or something, it's like, you gotta wait a few days, and we're also tracking you. We're also watching you.
Right.
So it's all about diversifying your control. So understand that, yeah, you may not make as much of a return having silver versus, let's say, crypto or stocks or whatever, but you have a benefit of just having quick control,
Yeah.
or just even having it in your hand. Like you
Yeah.
could literally just be like, all right, I got
Yeah.
my wealth in my hand, I'm going to go elsewhere,
Intrinsic value within itself. No matter who says that 1
Exactly.
ounce coin is worth what is irrelevant, because the value is the 1 ounce of silver inside of it, not the price tag attached to it. You know,
100%.
like
Best way to think about this is think about a car, right? Cars are depreciating assets. So we all know, like I have a Jeep, and this Jeep is worth way less than what I got it for. And however, I don't plan on selling it. I don't ever want to sell it. The reason
Yeah.
why is because it's worth more to me just having a car and be able to go places and not having to get on a bus or like call up an Uber or something like that. It's worth way more to me. And I won't sell it. I'm just waiting for it to just conk out on me and die. It's worth more to me
Yeah.
as the physical thing that I bought than the cash value that I can get. So it's worth way less dollar terms, but it's worth way more to me because
Yeah.
think about what a car does for you. It basically
Yeah.
saves you time.
Yeah.
And time is one of your most important assets as well. Just think about the time it takes to, wait at a bus stop. If it comes, it may come a little bit late. Then you got to wait because it's going to stop at every single stop before it hits your stop. There are certain things that hard assets can give you that are benefits that lie outside of the dollar price.
Yes.
Same thing with a home,
Yes. Yep.
So just think about that when you're thinking about, well, do I even want to get into silver? I gotta, monitor the price and everything like that. And it's like, well, just think about what the other benefits are aside even just from price.
Yeah. Like putting your money in a time capsule. Like I don't even want to explain the gas station or the gallon of gas thing, because I think I've talked about before, but that's like the perfect example to show like the timeless aspect of silver. I'm sure most of you know about it. But it really is like if I kept my money in my bank, let's say I had $20,000 and I said 40,000. I put 20,000 into silver and another 20 in my bank account. In like 30 years from now, the 20,000 in silver would be worth a lot more than that 20,000 in my bank that would just be rotting away in purchasing power.
Exactly, 100%. So guys, I think we just packed this in with a lot of information.
A lot.
We also gave you a cliffhanger for next week. We're going to be talking about this whole idea of creating elements out of nothing, what that might mean for silver and gold. So we'll be talking about that next week, along with many other topics regarding silver. So if you guys, before we go, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and also make sure to check out this video right here. Thanks again for watching. This is another episode of Silver Stacking Podcast. I'm investing with TJ.
I'm Silver Slayer.
And have a good one.
You got it. Peace.